There was a moment, a split second really, when everything changed. I'm not talking about the kind of change you expect, the kind that happens gradually, like when you move to a new house or start a new job. No, this was different. This was the kind of change that shakes your whole world, makes you question everything you thought you knew about life, loyalty, and the connections we share with the creatures around us. It was a day like any other. The rain had been falling since early morning, relentless, soaking everything it touched. The streets were flooded, traffic was backed up, and the kind of weather warnings you'd usually ignore were all too real. And there I was, doing my usual rounds, a little off my regular route, just following my instincts when I heard it. It wasn't loud, not like the usual crash or splash you'd expect if something big hit the water. It was soft, almost too soft, like the kind of sound you might hear when something small falls. I'd heard that sound before, a sound that stays with you, because you know it's not good. It's the sound of something or someone falling into the water from a great height. I had to get down there. I remember it like it was yesterday. I grabbed my flashlight, slipped into my boots, and rushed toward the sound, already knowing what I was about to find. I reached the embankment and shined my light through the rain. And that's when I saw him, this tiny German Shepherd puppy, probably no more than 10 weeks old, paddling furiously against the current. The water was swollen from the storm, rushing dangerously fast. He was fighting for his life, struggling just to stay above the surface. But the current was too strong. He was getting pulled toward the drainage culvert. If he went in there, I knew he'd be lost forever. I didn't think. There was no time to think. I just acted. I grabbed my rescue line, tied it to the nearest tree, and I dove in. The cold hit me like a ton of bricks. My body froze, my breath caught in my chest, but there was no stopping. I had to reach him. The water tried to pull me under, tried to take me down with it, but my eyes never left the pup. He wasn't barking, wasn't crying. He was just there, paddling with everything he had, refusing to give up. It felt like hours, but it was only minutes. My hands were numb, my boots were filled with water, and every step forward felt like fighting against a wall. But when I finally reached him, I scooped him up, shivering and soaked to the bone, and we made it back to the shore. The warmth of the patrol car was a relief, but the pup was shaking so violently, I feared for his life. He was exhausted, malnourished, and covered in dirt. But even in that state, there was something about him. His eyes weren't the wide, curious eyes of a typical puppy. No, these eyes were calculating, focused, as if he knew more than he should for a creature so young. I held him, wrapped him in my spare shirt, and for the first time, I really looked at him. He had no collar, no tags, no way to know where he'd come from. I called in for animal control, but I stayed with him, not wanting to let go. He looked up at me with those steady eyes, and I couldn't help but whisper, "You've had a rough start, haven't you?" The next few days were a blur. The puppy, now named Rook, was taken to the shelter. I sighted him every chance I got. Something about him just stayed with me. And over those sits, I began to realize there was something strange about him. Most puppies, especially those who'd gone through trauma, are jumpy, anxious, hard to manage. Not Rook. He sat quietly, observant, almost like he was sizing people up, figuring out whether or not they could be trusted. But what really threw me off was the way he responded to me. Every time I walked into the shelter, he'd get up from his bed, come to the gate, and sit there, waiting for me. It was uncanny. He didn't do it for anyone else, just me. It was like he recognized me, not just as the person who saved him, but as someone he had an undeniable connection with. So, I kept asking myself why. What was it about this dog that made him different? Why was he so calm, so in tune with me? And then, it hit me. Rook wasn't just some random puppy. He'd been trained to be something more. But who trained him? And why had they abandoned him? Why had someone tried to kill him? I started investigating. I followed Rook's behavior or tracked his movements, until one day, he led me to a place I'd never expected. It was an industrial lot on the edge of town, full of abandoned warehouses. Rook pulled me straight to a blue storage container, like he knew exactly where to go. I didn't understand at first, but then I saw it frayed rope, the same kind we used in K-9 training, tied in knots that only someone with knowledge of K-9 operations would recognize. That was when the pieces started falling into place. Inside that container, I found training materials, discharge papers, and a picture of Rook wearing a red harness. The same harness I'd seen on police dogs, marked cadet in training. That's when it all clicked. Rook hadn't just fallen from the bridge. He'd been thrown. He'd been abandoned because he wasn't good enough, not just by any person, but by someone who had been in the K-9 training world. Someone who had a lot of power. Rook had been rejected. He'd been discarded. But what I didn't know was that this wasn't just about a failed dog. This was about a system. A network of trainers who took dogs that didn't fit their standards and disposed of them. For years, they had been training dogs to be weapons and tools, but only the perfect ones got to live. I didn't stop there. With Rook by my side, we found more. The next location was hidden deeper in the woods, behind a rundown shelter. We uncovered more pictures, more signs of the network's operation dogs marked F for failure, P for past, and D for disposed. Rook had been one of the ones marked for disposal. But he survived. He remembered every turn, every scent, every detail, and he led me back here to expose the truth. And then, it all came crashing down. The investigation revealed Officer Trent Mollery, a former K-9 evaluator, who'd been running these operations on the side. His brutal training methods were exposed, and within days, he was arrested. The shelters were emptied, and dogs like Rook were given a chance they never would have had. But that wasn't the end of the story. Because Rook, he didn't just survive. He thrived. He became part of my team, the K-9 unit. He was sharp, focused, and ready for anything. He became more than just a survivor. He became a hero. That's what Rook taught me times. The greatest strength comes from those who've been broken. And they don't just survive the system, they change it. Together, Rook and I solved cases, cracked down on criminals, and made sure no other dog would suffer the way he had. But every time we went out, I'd look at him, his calm, unwavering eyes. And I knew, he wasn't just my partner. He was my family. We'd both been through things that would break most people, but together, we were stronger than anyone ever thought we could be. And that's where this story leaves you asking. How much of what we think we know is really true? How far are we willing to go to protect the ones we love, even when the system says they're disposable? Rook found his place, his purpose, and his partner. And in the end, so did I. So what do you think? What would you have done in my shoes? Would you have trusted a dog like Rook, even after everything he'd been through? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you believe in second chances, like, share, and subscribe for more stories that show the power of loyalty and resilience.